Let's do an update on our tinctures. Remember, we made our tinctures last week and they've been going for a week. So you can see this is the one that has powder in it, that we used powder, and this is Echinacea angustifolia root, and I put a little P there for powder, so I remember that. And it's a third apple cider vinegar, a third distilled water, and a third glycerin. And so we've been going by every day, and you can tell when we've gone longer without shaking it because there's that all of the herb that collects at the bottom. Now some herbs don't collect at the bottom. This usually only happens with powdered herbs, but you really got to shake that up because you want to get all of those herbs floating through this liquid, which is the natural solvent, that is pulling all the nutrients out of the fiber. That's basically what you're doing. You're not really, it's an extract in a natural form where you're throwing away the fiber or actually putting the fiber into your garden or in your compost or whatever, but you're pulling the nutrients that are so tantalizing in the herbs. They're the things that help your immune system function well and help us feel better and have energy and things like that. And so the nutrients sometimes are locked into the fiber, and it goes through when you take a whole plant. It's a wonderful experience, but sometimes it goes through the whole digestive system, and sometimes you don't feel it as quickly as you do in a tincture form. That's why this method is so incredibly powerful, because it takes powerful herbs and helps them be even more powerful. So that's our Echinacea tincture, and this one is our red clover. Remember, it was this beautiful blossoms and dried blossoms, and they've turned all brown and colorless. All of those nutrients go into the liquid or the solvent so that they are readily available to the body in a liquid, but also in a solvent that goes through the body faster. Like for instance, this one, the body absorbs water very well, but the apple cider vinegar also is absorbed very well and readily into the body. And also the glycerin, vegetable glycerin, goes through the body very easily, and when mixed together. This is alcohol. We all know what alcohol does. Alcohol goes through the body. Now, to use this tincture, you might want to put it in a cup of hot water to dissipate the alcohol, or taking small amounts of it is one way people take it, absorbing it into the body really, really readily. Especially herbs that you do in alcohol, you can put them under the tongue, even though it smarts. You put it under the tongue, and it seems to go through the bloodstream very, very quickly. For instance, herbs like lobelia and things like that you would want to have an uptake right away into the system. So that's our red clover, and this is red raspberry leaves. It has glycerin and distilled water. See how puffy this one is? Your herbs are all different. This is very, very puffy type of material, and it fluffs up. Another kind of puffy material that you would work with would be slippery elm bark, but this raspberry leaves, and you'll see the leaves were not this gray, and as the liquid gets color, the leaves change color, and kind of you just see the fiber there, and you really realize that there's really not that much nutrients left in it once you're finished with it. Then this one is our Brigham tea I made for my mom with vodka. And you can see, remember how it turned kind of pink, and now it's really, really dark and it's turned a little brown. This is wonderful and really, really beautiful. Here, let me dump some of it out and let's look at it. See, you could easily pour off the top of any of these and use them now. You can see as they change color, even in the first day, you can start to use them. So look at how beautiful that is. Oh my goodness. It's so an equivalent of this would be, for instance, if my mom couldn't make tea, which she loves to make tea out of the Brigham tea, she could put 5 or 6 squirts in hot water, and that would give her a type of feeling kind of like a tea without having to steep it for long periods of time. And so, isn't that great? It's going to be even darker than that when we are finished in 2 weeks. And what the heck, this is vodka. Sometimes I just let it sit for a long time. I'll pour off after 2 weeks and then just think, there's some goodness that can still come of that. Close it up, put it in my closet. Sometimes I forget to go in there and shake them and find them months later, but especially with alcohol, they will not go bad. That you can come back and just throw away the twigs after years of it being in the jar. Now, some cases, like in echinacea, I have found this, and using fresh herbs, which we haven't made a tincture with fresh herbs yet. We're going to do that later. But I found that if you leave it, even especially in glycerin, if you leave it in glycerin and distilled water with the leaves in there, sometimes even after 6 weeks, you can find mold in there. Now, not too much if you clean it really, really well with your hydrogen peroxide, but you will find mold and things like that grow in there. So you have to be more careful leaving the leaves in anything other than alcohol-based, and even apple cider vinegar you can leave for a period of time. So I hope you guys are shaking your herbs and making tinctures that you and your family will enjoy, and get into the feeling and the experience of being an herbalist. Let's learn how to make oils today. We're going to extract the properties of plants into oils for topical and internal use. I have a couple oils here that I made. This is a calendula oil, and calendula, another name for calendula is marigold. Here it is. It's a beautiful flowery oil. Calendula is most used for skin issues. Whenever you look up calendula or marigold, it's something that is a bright yellow or a bright orange flower, and it's really, really great for the skin. This is all extra virgin olive oil that I have mixed in with it and let it sit for a couple of weeks. So let's make the calendula oil. I have some really beautiful calendula flowers here. They are just wonderful. This flower is really drought resistant and wonderful in hot summers, but it is an incredible plant for skin. And the good thing about it is you can mix it with anything else. It seems to help the skin just repair and rejuvenate. Lots of cosmetic companies put calendula in their cosmetics. So, and it's also used in some pharmaceuticals for skin and creams and things like that. So what I do is just take the whole plant, because there's no sense grinding up this big old beautiful plant. And it looks really cool. You can kind of see over weeks' time of the calendula flower sitting in the oil, the flower just loses its color, and all of the magic actually goes into, oh, I'm making a mess. I'm way messier at home, you guys. This is, yeah, way messier. So I just stuff it full because I want it, because calendula flowers are really inexpensive, easy to grow. You can just lop the head right off your calendula flowers and dry them on just a screen or even in a dehydrator. Only dry them less than 119 degrees, keeping the greatness in there, the enzymes in there. And so what I do is I just take extra virgin olive oil. Now there's lots of other kinds of oils. You can use almond oil, you can use grapeseed oil, you can use all kinds of oils, but I love extra virgin olive oil because it is one of the 7 healers of the world, and it has incredible components that helps your body heal. It is amazing. So I want those incredible properties in all of my oils, and so I almost always used extra virgin olive oil. Some people don't use it because they think it's too heavy or it has issues, it has some problems, but when I make my salves and my oils, I always use it because it adds something really great to the plant. It's got lots of minerals. One of the old tricks in my family to use it for just straight olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, is if you get hit or bumped or bruised where you know you are going to have a bad bruise, you can put that on there within minutes, but it's got to be within minutes, and the bruising is so lessened, so much lessened. I mean, we have tried this out in my family. We've like tried it on one arm, then tried it on the other arm, you know, if somebody got hurt, or we've even done half a bruise just to try it out, and it really does work. The part where you immediately get extra virgin olive oil on it tends to repair faster and rejuvenate faster. And so I always use it with my oils. So all I do, and you don't have to make this much oil because quite frankly, this is a lot of oil. This is enough oil to last you a very, very long time. And the thing about using extra virgin olive oil is it goes rancid. So you have to be able to, if you're making your oils, you really ought to keep them in the refrigerator after you strain them, because the oils will definitely go rancid. Now some plants that you use will lock in with extra virgin olive oil and have a component that somehow keeps them fresh, and so it never goes rancid. But always, if you're using extra virgin olive oil, after you strain it out. So this is just going to sit here. I'm going to go ahead and label it with my label. Remember to label everything. I'm telling you, it will be unrecognizable later on, for sure. Let's see, this is I think I say that wrong, calendula. People correct me all the time, but it's the marigold flower. And make sure you don't spray or have any pesticides on yours at all. So this is in olive oil, and we are I can't remember what day it is. Okay, calendula oil, there we go. We marked it, so in case we forget about it, we can always come back and strain it later. And you can see the oil is already changing color to that beautiful, beautiful yellow golden color. So what I like to do with the calendula oil, because this is what will make this, is I love to be able to put it in little bottles. I love to collect these little bottles. You can get them online, and then you can actually order bags of corks. And I used to put all my oils in these little bottles, which are kind of cute and pharmaceutically looking a little bit, but I like these really old bottles, and you put corks on them, and then they make really, really, really great gifts. Very inexpensive, and people love this stuff. And you can make little fancy labels or whatever. If you have a lot, you can put, get bigger bottles, but it's sometimes nice to have these little ones. I collect them, and my mom, I gave her a little one that's like an Eiffel Tower, and I give away these little bottles, and then they just bring them back to me, and I refill them for them. So that's kind of fun. Sometimes I put them in here, but usually I want to put them in smaller bottles, because then you can have that on your counter, and the oils stay fresh. Even this is a little. This is just a little thing they brought me from Canada, full of what is this? Maple syrup. Yes. And so I saved the bottle because I was going to put it in and give it back to one of my daughters with oil in it. So let me grab a little funnel, and let's pour this beautiful oil right into this little bottle that I sterilized ahead of time. That's one thing I forgot to mention, is just like you guys use hydrogen peroxide to clean everything with tinctures, make sure and use it with all of your things before you start, including these little bottles, because sometimes there's a little funk that stays in the bottle, and you got to clean that out. So make sure and label this. This is a great calendula oil. It's cute. It can sit there. You'll use it. The magic of herbs are really not in the bottle. I sometimes will ask people about their herbs and say, "Are you taking them or whatever?" And are you using it? And they'll say, "Oh, I forget." And my comment to them is, you got to use it. It's not as good in the bottle. It doesn't work as well in the bottle as it does in your body. So if you have it out there available, you may reach for that instead of maybe a chemical. I found a few weeks ago this jar of comfrey oil. It's used to be full all the way, but I filled it all the way full of fresh comfrey leaves from my mom's garden and covered it with olive oil. Actually, I don't even think I did this, because this isn't my handwriting. This is my daughter's, Eliza. So she made this great comfrey oil, and I found it when we moved recently, and I had been pouring it off and using it and giving it to my mom and dad and friends, and it's great. We've been using it with other things too. It seems to drive whatever component you want in deeper, and you can literally see scars change and things change with comfrey. This has been I didn't even strain this off. I've just been pouring it off and leaving the herb in there. Sometimes fresh herbs will make your oil go moldy if you leave it in there too long, but comfrey seems to not be one of those. So I'm going to strain this off. Let's see, the rest of the way. What I use is a cleaned bowl and stainless steel strainer because that's what I like to be able to touch my oil. I want only glass or stainless steel. I don't want plastics to touch the oils or touch or be by the herbs if I can help it, because those things could possibly leach into my herbs, and that's not what I want. So this is kind of messy, so let's roll up our sleeves, and you might want to grab an apron when you're doing your oils or salves, even your tinctures, because I have ruined many shirts doing it this way. So throw on a cute little antique apron one of my clients gave me. It says herbs for health, and it has all these old herbs. Isn't that cute? Just have to show it. I sometimes use a colander like this if I have large amounts, but since there's just such a small amount, I don't need a lot. Sometimes I will strain the oil just straight through this stainless steel strainer, or sometimes I strain through unbleached muslin. This is a piece of pre-washed unbleached muslin. This one's never been used, as you can tell. There's nothing on it, and I strain through that to get the little bits and things out of it. Also, one of the reasons why I strain through unbleached muslin is because once you get the mass of herb in there, you can often push on it and get more of the nutrients out of the fiber of the herb. So we're just going to dump this right in here. There's not that much oil left in there because I have loved this oil, and I couldn't wait for my mom's comfrey to actually come back in season, because I mean, who wouldn't? This is the best oil. Okay, so I'm straining it, I'm squishing it here, and you just want to make sure you get every little bit out. All the components that are locked in the inside of the cells of the plant are deep in there, and it's great to just keep doing it and keep doing it until you don't get any out at all. Sometimes I let it soak. I'll just let it drain for a while. I'll put a piece of cloth on a colander and a bowl underneath it and just let it sit, and then come back and squeeze it out later on, especially if it's powder. Sometimes it sits and strains really well. So there we go. Look at how beautiful that is. So beautiful. This is the coolest herb ever. It's so strong. Oh, it's just so messy. So if I want to, I can put this oil right back into this bottle, or I've got a couple of other little bottles that I was going to fill up, and I've got a couple of other little bottles that I'm going to fill with this comfrey oil. This particular comfrey oil, as you can tell, I am kind of mad scientist-ish about this. This is my own personal face oil that I use, and it has a base of the comfrey oil, some reishi spore oil, and some lotus in it. And so that's my personal stuff. But as you can see, I don't mind the grit too much, so sometimes I just add the herb right into the oil and just pour off the top, and that's what I did in this case. And so you'll just do whatever works for you. So we will take this and we're going to dump it right back into this. Now, if you had made this with powder, you wouldn't be able to dump it right back in there. You would need, well, since this is my oil, I'm just going to use my hands. Here we go. So dump it right back in there, and you know you have a date and everything right on it still, and then you can fill your little bottles, or you can take this and make another formula out of it and add to it. I heard an herbalist once call comfrey a big dumb herb, because it does everything, that it just pushes through and drives everything in. So make sure into the cells is what I'm saying. It just drives everything through and helps proliferate cells, even if sometimes it has chemicals with it. I mean, if you're using chemicals on that area, maybe comfrey is not a good idea, because it does proliferate healing over even infections if the infection is still not all the way gone. So I always like to add it to golden seal or even plantain, and we're going to make a salve out of that. So here's my little, let's look at these comfrey leaves right here. These are the leaves, and oh my gosh, if my husband was here I'd have him squeeze it even harder because there's still great components in there. You can see it was just cut up. But these leaves are bright and broad and beautiful, and they're kind of hairy when you have them. And so I really, really recommend that if you can grow your own comfrey or if you can get fresh comfrey, it makes a really great oil. Also, we can make salves and oils out of the root, but then you cook the root a little bit to make that oil. And we'll show you how to do that later on. So let's make some lobelia oil. Lobelia is one of those herbs that's used usually in alcohol base topically for strained muscles or owies or things like that. But we discovered it early on, extracted in an olive oil base that we love. In fact, my family calls it yobelia oil because when the little kids say it, they call it yobelia oil. So we lovingly kind of changed the name to angel oil, but it's lobelia oil to us, and I'm going to show you how to make it today. So here is our lobelia. This is just some ground lobelia. Put the lid off here. This is a great way to store it, but you would store it in a closet so that there's not light affecting this much lobelia, because this is a lot of lobelia. But you know, powdered is a great way to store your herbs because they stay fresh for a long period of time if you keep them out of the heat and out of the light, and especially in glass containers. This has a kind of a floral scent to it, and it's a little bit peppery, and it tastes a little bit peppery. But we are going to make the oil that is usually used topically. So grab a quart jar, and what I do is, okay, you've caught me, I hardly ever measure, but when you're making an oil, especially when you're using powder, you make it with the same that you would make tinctures. So it's going to be 4 parts oil to 1 part of the powder. And that is because when the powder is powdered up and ground down like this, there's a lot of surface area. And so if this much lobelia was, if I had it in a whole form, it would be all over this whole table. When we grind it down, we can hold it in smaller containers, and it's usually easier to work with when you're making the liquids. So I am going to put 3/4 of a cup of the lobelia. This is going to make a lot of lobelia oil, but it is great oil, and it's wonderful for gifts. We usually, the only thing we put in our lobelia oil is we add a little bit of essential oil, lavender essential oil. And when I was traveling and speaking a lot, I would travel with my newborn babies, and we had a lot of kids at home, and so we'd leave the oldest ones at home, and Kurt would come with me with my nursing baby, and we would fly in the first flight before I spoke, and then fly home the flight after that. And we flew a couple times a month for a few years, and lecturing on herbs, and I think lobelia oil saved us, because Kurt would use the lobelia oil on the nursing baby's feet and on their back, our kids' backs, and they really would do well. It calms them on the airplanes. We use it for tummy aches all the time. Rubbing it on a tummy ache works wonders. So you really will want to make some of this. So we're just going to put this powder. This is just like at home, you guys. So we are going to put this powder right here, and we're going to save as much as we can. Luckily, making herbs is not like baking a cake. When you bake, you have to have your measurements exactly. I'm not a good baker, can you imagine? So even though these herbs are just for me, and I know how clean they are, we're going to put that right back in there, and have just the same amount of lobelia. We're going to make the same amount of lobelia oil. So, you know, this is a messy job. Here we go with extra virgin olive oil. It's what I use. I love it. And usually I just eyeball it, but for your sake, I'm going to measure it. So I put in 3/4 of a cup of the lobelia, and so I am going to need 3 cups, 4 times the amount of the oil. So we're going to put this in here and we're going to mix it up just like you do with a tincture, and it becomes kind of thick and kind of heavy, and it will thicken up on the bottom. So you'll let this sit overnight, and you're going to come back the next day and it's going to be like glue on the bottom. So you have to shake it up. You've got to get used to getting the oils from the bottom. Otherwise, the product doesn't distribute all the way through the oil and you have a weak oil. So here's our lobelia oil. We'll come back in another segment and strain this for you, but you strain it just in a similar way through the cloth. I usually use a colander. In case you guys get ahead of me, I use a colander and a bowl, and I will take a piece of muslin and lay right in there, pour the oil in there, let it sit, and then come back and start squeezing. This is about as big a batch as I like to make to use by hand. Otherwise, it's really hard to squeeze all the goodness out of all the dry herb because my hands aren't big enough for that. So there you go. Go make yourself some lobelia oil. You will love it. Today we're going to make salves, and I have a couple of really old salves that I have collected over the years. This is a really old mutton suet salve. We're not going to be making a mutton suet salve, but it's cool, a cool old salve, and it's actually really in here, and they put it in this jar. It's very old. I'm sure it's at least 100 years old, but it's cool to look at and neat that to see old things like that. And then here's another salve. That's an old salve, and you can get salves in health food stores and things like that, different salves, but you might as well make your own. They're cheaper and they're usually much, much better than what you can get. A lot of people will make aromatherapy salves where they put essential oils just into the salve, into a salve, and it's not really an herbal salve like I'm going to show you how to make. We really want to extract components of the herbs into the salve so they work very well. So first thing we need, So first thing we need is a crock pot. Now I love the little teeny crock pots that you can get, and I use those a lot, but oftentimes they're full. And this is a crock pot that like you can get in any store. Oftentimes the crock pots only have the off, low, and high, and you will probably burn your salve if you have that, and I've burnt many salves. The salves can burn and heat up, and it's the chlorophyll actually in the salve that burns and makes that burn happen. So you would really want to keep it on warm setting, and we'll talk about that. We're going to keep it on warm setting, but warm doesn't always get it as strong. And so sometimes if I'm watching it, actually often, when I know I'm going to be watching it for a few hours, I'll turn it up to low for a few hours and then turn it back down, but make sure that I'm stirring it, because the salve components will sink to the bottom, and the bottom part kind of burns. So with the temperature, you never would want to turn it up to high or medium. You would want it to go from warm to low and then back to warm again. You never want to put it up to high, because it really does burn the ingredients and burns the components, and you really want to keep as many of the nutrients in it as possible, any of the components in it, because it is used topically. So let's get some herbs here. We've got some plantain and some comfrey here, and you can use comfrey leaf or comfrey root. This is plantain. Plantain is known as nature's band-aid. Anytime you have an owie, plantain is one of those herbs that you reach for. And anytime anything needs to get better, plantain is one of those great soothing herbs. This is comfrey. We've talked a lot about comfrey. Comfrey is illegal in the U.S. to sell for internal use, and we are going to make an external salve. It is great, and the root of comfrey is terrific when heated up and used. We're going to make start out by making a heated oil. I've showed you how to make a fresh component oil where it's live or raw oil. This is going to be a heated oil, and then we're actually going to turn it into, solidify it into a salve and show you how to do that. So, this is a little comfrey box that I found. It doesn't have a date on it, but this is from little herb apothecary from years gone by, and I love them. So I collect them, all the little herb things. So let's start with our plantain. When you make salves, remember that the salves are 4 part of the liquid you're using, the oil, and 1 part of the powdered herb. If you're using cut herb to make salve, then you use a little bit more of the cut herb, double the amount of cut herb. But we're using powder, so we're using 4 parts of the oil, which is our extra virgin olive oil is what we're using, and 1 part of the comfrey plantain mixed together. So the powder has to total 1 part compared to 4 parts, and it doesn't matter what size your part is. Your part can be 1 cup or 1 tablespoon. You can make as much or as little as you want. It's kind of like a recipe, so you have to think about this not as being so technical. It is 4 parts liquid to 1 part powder combined. So I'm gonna take out some plantain, and I'm just gonna do a 1/2 cup of the plantain and then a 1/2 cup of the comfrey. There we go. And put this over here. Sorry. Show you how strong I am. Get these lids off. Okay. So this is beautiful, beautiful comfrey root. And I'm just going to add another 1/2 cup, up to a cup. So I'm going to put that in my crock pot. Let me put this lid over here. I can move this out of the way. So, the comfrey back over here. Get the plantain. Okay, so now we have our herbs in there. We're going to take the olive oil, and we need 4 times that amount. So we need 4 cups of olive oil. So I've got 4 cups of the olive oil and 1 cup of the mixture of herbs. So let me take this, let you guys look at this. You're just going to mix it up and just keep mixing it until it saturates and it becomes very, very thick. Let me take this out of here and let you guys look at this. See what's happening here. You see that? You're just making mud pies. I used to love to make mud pies when I was a kid, playing in the mud. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on low right away because we're going to watch it for a couple hours, and then we're going to turn it on warm. But if you're not going to watch it, make sure that you keep it on low. And we keep it on low for 3 days or 13 days or 20 days or however long you want to keep your salve going. It will get really, really dark. Usually 3 days, you have a really great salve after 3 days. So this in here. Make sure that you've rinsed all your utensils with that food grade hydrogen peroxide, because you want to make sure that all the effort you're putting into these really great salves, you don't want them to go bad on you. Okay, here it is. You do not have to worry about heating these herbs. These herbs, we usually are aware of heating herbs when we're ingesting them. Some herbs are great to heat and really great for ingesting them, but there are different components. Like the Chinese use some herbs they heat and some herbs they don't. Some roots they heat and get one particular reaction in the body, and other ones a different reaction. We are heating this because we're not looking to keep the enzymes in in this. We need to be able to keep it, we want to be able to extract as much out of it, and the heat does that. And roots are really a little bit hard to extract without having heat. A lot of great components come out when you're using roots for heating, and especially for salves. So it doesn't matter, you can heat this up. We're not trying to keep the enzymes, we're trying to just extract as much as we can of the properties to put on topically. So we're going to set this aside, make sure it's turned on warm, and let it go. But for the sake of time, I already have a finished one. I used a small pot so you could see the difference. So this salve I used comfrey leaf. You can see how green it is. It's comfrey leaf and plantain, and I left it a little bit warm because I like to strain it when it's warm because it seems to work better and not to be as gummy. So what I use to make the salve and finish up the salve is a stainless steel colander and a stainless steel bowl washed with food grade hydrogen peroxide. And then I use one of my cloths that I've already rinsed, this unbleached muslin, and I will put it in here. And what I'm doing is just making a little bowl so that I can gather it up and squeeze. But this gets really, the salve gets really hard on the bottom, and so the raw herb gets really hard on the bottom, so I have been stirring it every day. So you need to make sure and stir your salve 2 or 3 times a day. But when you're ready to strain it, I like to just let it sit for a day or two and get really hard on the bottom, so it's easier to just strain the liquid out. Let's see so you guys can see this. Just look at how beautiful and dark that is. Sometimes I'll just dump it all in and just leave that bottom part to squeeze out later on. I'm still going to come back to this, but for now I'm just going to do the easy part. And sometimes I'll just let it sit, or if I'm in a hurry. Now make sure when you're doing this you squeeze the top really, really tight, otherwise it will get up in your face and get all over you, like it has happened to me many, many times. I know that surprises each of you. So I'm just twisting this top part and leaving my hand here, because it's just pushing all of the goodness out of the fiber of these plants. It's releasing. We're begging, we're pleading for the plant to release its nutrients in. Okay, so this is all that liquid. Isn't that beautiful? It's just beautiful. So we are going to take this, warm it up, add some beeswax to it, and make salve. But first, we need to look at what's in here. There was only a little bit of that in there, of the fiber, and it's kind of sticky and gummy and gums up these cloths. And some people wash out these cloths a lot, and other people just throw them away, so it's up to you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this liquid in another container so that I can have more room to really work with this other. Okay, so let me strain this into here. Pour this into here. And we will come back to this later on. Sometimes I have strained it through a stainless steel mesh strainer, kind of like, let's see, like this one. But with salves, you still get a lot of grit out of this. And so I really recommend you using a cloth, even though it is probably one of the most messy things that you will do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that same piece of cloth in there, and we're going to take a spoon that we've sterilized, and we're going to take out all this lovely goodness at the bottom. You see that? How black that is. Those herbs are not black when we put them in there. They shift and change and release their colors, and they are heated into a different type of thing that actually works wonders. This is just, these, you can look in tons of old books. Salves are made so many different ways. The turn of the 18th century, they used petroleum jelly. They would just extract herbs or add extracts of herbs to petroleum jelly. I don't like to use that because it's actually a component that I don't think is good for the body. So I actually like to use that extra virgin olive oil, or even some other, you can use other oils if you love other oils. So here we are. So normally I would scrape every bit out of this, take the time to scrape every bit out of it, because I think, which I know actually, is that lots of wonderful goodness lurks in this black gold. When you squeeze this out, it is so much stronger than the stuff that you squeeze out before and just strained off. And most companies who do it commercially just use the strained stuff, because this is kind of hard to do and messy. So it's not that hard to do. It's just kind of messy, I guess. If I have a big, strong guys around the house, I will sometimes have them come and squish my oils, because they're so, look how black that is. Is that gorgeous? Just know you're just getting so much out. And one of the ways that I've learned to do it when I don't have anybody stronger than me at the house is I will just push on it and push on it. I have a friend who she has a stainless steel bowl that fits just inside her colander, and then she'll put bricks inside the stainless steel bowl up against this. She'll put the bricks in there and let it weight down. But if you keep working it and working it, it takes sometimes a while, and you know you're finished when you don't get any more oil out. So keep squeezing it, and look at, we're still getting oil. You keep squeezing it and squeezing it. You can watch your favorite TV show. You can watch your class while you're doing this. You can watch your herb class. Now you can make salves out of anything. Almost any herb. Slippery elm makes a great salve. Myrrh and golden seal. Oh, we love that one. We'll be showing you how to make myrrh and golden seal. And one of my friends who has 5 boys, they were all into baseball, and they were always getting skinned up really badly. And so they started testing a chemical salve that's on the market, that's prescription and not prescription, on one side of the body. And then they started putting they used the golden seal myrrh salve on the opposite side. And they found that the golden seal myrrh actually healed up faster than using the chemical on the body. And one of their sons became allergic to that chemical, so it was nice that they had an alternative. So here you go. Just keep, you can see it just drips every bit, and it's just so darn black. It's just black gold. So you keep squeezing it. I'd probably let this sit for a little bit and come back and squeeze it again, but let's look at what's in here. Now, this is beautiful. I spilled some of my pulp in here. So that's what it is. It's just pulp. Black, beautiful pulp. And people just throw it away or put it in their mulch pile. But that is the pulp that you wouldn't want to put topically, because it's not comfortable. Now, I spilled some in there, but hopefully that won't get in there. Okay, here's all the dark stuff that we got out of this wonderful, wonderful herb that we have. And what I did was I took some of the dark stuff that I took the time to squeeze out and put it in this jar. And then over here is the liquid that was just sitting on top of the salve. And you can't really see it, but if you hold it up to the light, I cannot see through this one, but I can see light through this one. Really cool. This means this one is so much darker and has so much more into it, and has extracted more of the stuff we took time to squeeze out. So I'm going to dump this goodness in here. And we're going to finish making our salve. Now this would be considered a comfrey plantain salve. A comfrey plantain oil. So you could just use this just by itself topically, but we want to make a salve out of it. We want to make a solid salve, kind of like this. This is a little salve that I made before. It's in a plastic jar. Don't love putting them in plastic jars, but I like to be able to put salves in little jars because you can use them up and everybody's dirty little fingers get in them. So I like using little teeny jars. But first, so what we need to do to make it in this salve consistency where it can be put on a wound when it's not so oily and drippy and everything, is we're going to put beeswax in it. So I have some beautiful beeswax. This is unbleached beeswax, and the bleached beeswax is white, and some old recipes call for paraffin wax, but I like to use beeswax. It smells wonderful, it's beautiful, and these happen to be in 1 ounce sticks, which is perfect for what we want to do. Usually they come in big blocks and you kind of have to guess. In where we live, we are in a warmer environment, and so we use more beeswax here than you would use maybe in Minnesota where it might be colder. We use 8 ounces of liquid, of the extracted liquid, to 1 ounce of beeswax, and these little sticks here are 1 ounce. So I am going to take 8 ounces or 1 cup of this beautiful oil, and I'm going to add it back. So for every cup I'm going to add 1 of these 1 ounce things of beeswax. You can see everything gets underneath your nails, and when you're working with this, usually I will chunk off, I need a better knife, chunk off pieces of beeswax like this, just so that I can break it up so that it melts faster. Now I'm turning my crock pot on on high right now because I'm watching it, but I also want to heat this beeswax, but I only want to heat it just enough so that I gotta get a bigger knife. Just enough so that it will dissolve in there so that it can go through and solidify. Now the difference between using an oil on a wound or something and using a salve is salves that have beeswax in them tend to lock in the moisture and lock in the nutrients, which is really great unless you have an open wound. If you have an open wound that has pus or hasn't healed over, or it's a brand new wound, you don't want to put a salve on it. You would put an oil on it, or you would put a poultice on it, which we will be making later on, or a compressed. The salve would be after the body kind of healed over and you can see that it's starting to heal itself. That's when you use a salve, or you use a salve that you might have put menthol in for your chest or for any owies. I'm not making all of this salve right now. Normally I would just put the whole amount back in and make the whole amount of salve, but for now I'm just going to melt and make 8 ounces of it, of the salve, and you can see the beeswax gets smaller and smaller and just melts, and you just have to just keep stirring it until it melts in. Usually it takes about 5 minutes or so to melt all this beeswax. Okay, we've been stirring this for about 10 minutes and the beeswax is almost melted. You can do this on a stove, but use a double boiler so that the flames or the heating element is not directly on the bottom of the pan. So I'm just letting the last little bit of this melt, and what I do is I take an empty jar that's been cleaned out. Your salve will last longer if you clean it out with hydrogen peroxide. So when all of the beeswax is melted, I will take a little bit and put it in here and stick it in the refrigerator and see how firm it gets. You can see that it's a salve, not an oil now, because it sticks to the side of the jar or the bottle. So here's some of the salve solidified. I took a little bit of it and put it in the refrigerator just to tighten it up really fast. You can see how beautiful that salve is, and that's about the right consistency that you would want So that is really good to go. What I do is I just take the salve after I have melted everything. So you want to shut this off. Shut off your crock pot. And this over here. And here's the liquid with the melted beeswax. I'm going to pour it into a glass container with a spout on it, because you want to be able to pour this into your jars that you've prepared ahead of time, because this will set up really fast in this jar. And what I usually do is just set up a whole bunch of jars. This is an old cosmetic jar that's glass, and I just cleaned it out, and it's a great one to recycle and use. And then I will pick up these little jars at thrift stores or anything to recycle jars to be able to use. You can put your salve in a larger jar, but then I usually will warm it up on the stove or in the microwave to make it into smaller jars, because in my household I have a lot of sticky, icky fingers, and so I don't want their icky fingers in the salve every time they use it, so I usually give everybody their own individual salve. I'm kind of funny that way. So you just let this sit, it solidifies, turns into a solid, and you have your salve. Beautiful, beautiful salve that is that will last a long, long time. I've had like a jar of salve will get pushed back in the back of my herb cabinet, and gosh, heavens knows how old it is because the label is so old. Sometimes if I want these to solidify, like I'm making a whole bunch of them for gifts, I'll put them on a cookie sheet and then just line them all up and then put them in my refrigerator or my freezer to make them solid before I put the lid on, because they get a really pretty top on them when you don't touch them and just let them sit, and they look really great, really, really wonderful for gifts. So that's how we make comfrey and plantain salve. Beautiful salve that we use daily in our house, and you guys will love it. I just know it. When we're talking about the comfrey plantain salve, we are not talking about plantain bananas. We're talking about the plant, the green plant that grows in grasses all over the West in the United States. Once you recognize plantain, you'll be able to see it. It's got these little things that grow off the top of it, and it's got this, it's just this simple little plant that has a big punch when it comes to making salves. We love it. It's one of our favorites. So remember, when you put it in a big jar, if you have to reheat it on the stove. Never use the microwave. You're in big trouble if you use your microwave on these wonderful herbs, because we definitely have taken such great care that we want it to have all of the healing properties that God intended for these plants to have. So your homework this week is to make a salve. Get all the components, put it together, and make yourself a salve and use it. And give it to friends and try it out and see what you think. Have it in your first aid kit. It's a wonderful thing to do.